A lone father, a 6-year-old girl whose heart overflowed with compassion, and a woman, shattered, finding solace on a weathered bench, clutching a faded photograph, the last tangible link to a love now lost. That seemingly unremarkable Saturday morning at a Portland bus stop held the potential to dramatically alter their lives, weaving a tapestry of connection none could foresee. Before we delve further, we're eager to know where in the world you're joining us from. It's always heartwarming to witness the reach of our stories. The Division Street bus stop was quiet that Saturday. Only one figure occupied the bench, a young woman with blonde hair, strands escaping to frame a face streaked with tears. Her clothes, rumpled and worn, suggested they had served as her bedding. This wasn't a performance of grief. It was the quiet, desolate weeping that rises from a place beyond words, a realm of profound sorrow. Tears traced paths down her cheeks as her fingers tightened around a crumpled photograph, her gaze fixed upon it as if it were the only anchor tethering her to reality. Collins Briggs noticed her immediately. His first instinct was protective, not of the woman herself, but of his daughter. Abigail's small hand nestled warmly within his calloused palm as they embarked on their Saturday morning ritual, a trip to the farmer's market. At 6, Abigail possessed an uncanny ability to perceive nuances that most adults had trained themselves to ignore. Collins knew his daughter well enough to understand that she had already registered the woman's distress. "Daddy?" Abigail whispered, tugging gently on his hand. Her brown eyes, so strikingly like her mother's, turned upward, reflecting a concern too weighty for her young face. "That lady is really sad." Collins gently attempted to steer them toward the opposite side of the sidewalk. "I know, baby, but sometimes people need space when they're upset." They were nearly past the bus stop when Abigail came to a complete standstill, releasing his hand. "Abigail," Collins began, a note of warning in his voice, but his daughter was already in motion. Her small body propelled toward the bench with the unwavering determination she exhibited when her mind was made up. The woman looked up, startled, as a little girl in a peach-colored jacket materialized before her. Her initial impulse was to wipe away her tears, embarrassed to be seen in such a vulnerable state by a child. Abigail stood for a moment, her gaze unwavering as she studied the woman with the disarming directness only children possess. Then, her voice clear and soft, she spoke. "I think you need a hug. Can I hug you?" Her little arms were already extended, offering comfort. The woman's face crumpled further. Fresh tears welled, but something in their essence had shifted. She nodded, unable to articulate a response, and the little girl enveloped her in a hug as complete as her small frame allowed. Collins stood frozen a few feet away, his throat suddenly constricted. He watched his daughter embrace the stranger with the same fierce tenderness she displayed when he returned home exhausted from construction sites, too drained to do anything but collapse on the couch. "It's okay," Abigail said softly, patting the woman's back. "My daddy says crying helps the sad come out so happy can come back in." The woman emitted a sound that was a mixture of a laugh and a sob. She gently returned the child's embrace, her shoulders shaking. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, she was being touched with kindness instead of suspicion. Collins approached slowly, every protective instinct on high alert. But something about the moment felt undeniably genuine, almost sacred. "I'm sorry," the woman said, her voice raw with emotion. She pulled back slightly from Abigail, wiping her face with her sleeve. "I'm not usually like this." "No apologies needed," Collins said quietly, settling down on the bench. He kept Abigail positioned between them, a father's caution still present despite the tenderness of the exchange. "I'm Collins. This is my daughter Abigail." "Elodie," she managed, her voice barely audible. "That's a pretty name. Why are you so sad?" "Abigail, that's personal," Collins started, but Elodie shook her head. "It's okay." She glanced down at the photograph in her hand, then extended it so Abigail could see. It depicted two women seated at a Christmas dinner table, their faces radiant with laughter. One was clearly a younger version of Elodie. The other, older, possessed the same blonde hair and warm smile. "Is that your mommy?" Abigail asked. Elodie nodded, her jaw tight as she fought back another wave of tears. "Yeah, she died 8 months ago. Pancreatic cancer. It happened so fast, we didn't even have time to say all the things we needed to say." She touched the photograph gently, as if it might disintegrate under too much pressure. Today would have been her 54th birthday. The words hung heavy in the air between them. Collins felt something crack open within his chest, that distinct recognition that stems only from shared loss. He knew intimately what it felt like to have the calendar transform into a minefield of painful anniversaries. "I'm sorry," he said, and the sincerity in his voice prompted Elodie to look at him more closely. There was understanding reflected in his expression, not mere pity. "You get it," she said, her statement devoid of questioning. Collins nodded slowly. 3 years now. Some days are easier than others. Most days aren't easy at all. Abigail squeezed Elodie's hand. "My mommy went to heaven, too. Daddy says she's watching us from the stars." Elodie's eyes welled again, but she managed a sad smile. "What was your mommy like?" "Daddy says she was really good at making pancakes, and she always sang when she was happy. Daddy says I got her eyes." Collins placed his hand on his daughter's shoulder, steadying himself as much as her. They didn't often speak of their mother. The wound was still too tender. But Abigail was right, she did have her mother's eyes. He looked at Elodie, really looked at her. Beneath the disheveled clothes and tangled hair, he could discern a woman who had once lived a very different life. There was an undeniable education evident in her careful articulation, even through her tears. "Do you have somewhere to stay?" he asked gently. Elodie's jaw tightened. Pride battled with honesty in her expression. "Different places," she said carefully. "The shelter when there's room. Sometimes there isn't room." "What about food?" She didn't answer, her silence speaking volumes. Abigail looked up at her father, her big eyes knowing. "Daddy, she's hungry." "I know, baby." Collins made a decision. "Elodie, we're heading to the farmer's market. Would you join us?" "My treat. Abigail never lets me pick the right apples anyway." Elodie hesitated, every survival instinct honed over the past months screaming at her to proceed with caution, to not place her trust too easily. But there was something about this man and his daughter that felt safe, genuine. "I don't want to be a burden," she said quietly. "Please," Abigail said, still holding her hand. "You can teach me how to pick the good apples. Daddy always gets the mushy ones." Despite everything, Elodie laughed, a real laugh that surprised even her. "Okay, I guess I'm an apple expert now." They walked the 3 blocks to the farmer's market together, an unlikely trio. Abigail positioned herself between Collins and Elodie, holding both their hands, chattering about everything and nothing. "I'm in 1st grade. My teacher is Mrs. Patterson, and she has a really loud voice, but she's nice. My best friend is Maya, and she has a dog named Biscuit. Do you like dogs?" "I want a dog, but Daddy says we're not home enough." Collins watched Elodie listen to his daughter with genuine interest, occasionally asking questions that made Abigail light up even more. There was patience in the way Elodie engaged with her, a natural comfort with children that couldn't be faked. As they walked, Collins found himself studying Elodie's profile when she wasn't looking. She couldn't be more than 28, maybe 30, far too young to have experienced the kind of profound loss that aged one's eyes the way hers were. "How long has it been since you had something warm to eat?" he asked quietly while Abigail was distracted by a street musician. Elodie's step faltered slightly. "Tuesday, I think. Maybe Monday." The days kind of blur together. The shelter doesn't provide meals. When they have room, they do, but there are more people than beds most nights. She stated it matter-of-factly, without self-pity, simply acknowledging the reality of her world. Collins felt anger rise in his chest, not at her, but at the confluence of circumstances that had led someone educated and capable to sleeping on the streets. "What did you do before?" "Before I was homeless," Elodie finished for him without bitterness. "I worked at Powell's Books, the big one on Burnside. Did inventory, customer service. Ran the children's Saturday reading program." A ghost of pride flickered across her face. I have a degree in library science from Portland State. What happened? Elodie was quiet for a moment, watching Abigail skip ahead to look at a window display. My mom got sick. Pancreatic cancer doesn't mess around. It moves fast and it's expensive. I took time off to take care of her. Used all my sick days, then my vacation days, then started missing shifts because she needed round-the-clock care those last few weeks. She swallowed hard. I got let go 3 weeks before she died. Lost the apartment 2 months after that. Couldn't afford it on unemployment, and medical bills had taken everything we had. I tried finding another job, but it's hard when you don't have an address for them to mail your W-2. You know? And I couldn't afford professional clothes for interviews. It's like once you slip through the cracks just keep getting wider. Collins recognized that spiral. If not for his union construction job with health insurance, if not for his brother Marcus helping with childcare after his wife died, he could have easily found himself in the same precarious situation. I'm sorry, he said. That's not fair. Life rarely is, Elodie said with a slight shrug. Then she looked at him directly. But it's strange. 8 months of barely surviving, and today, on what should be the hardest day, your daughter hugged me, a stranger. And now I'm walking to a farmer's market like a normal person having a normal Saturday. You are a normal person, Collins said firmly. Tell that to the people who cross the street when they see me coming. Before Collins could respond, Abigail ran back to them, grabbing both their hands. We're here. Come on. They have the good donut stand. The farmer's market was alive with Saturday morning energy. Vendors hawked fresh produce, artisan breads, handmade crafts. The air was thick with the aroma of coffee and fresh pastries. Collins watched Elodie's face as they entered. For a moment, something akin to longing crossed her features, a memory of a different life, when coming to places like this was commonplace, not a luxury. Apples stand first, Abigail announced, pulling them toward a booth overflowing with different varieties. Elodie, you have to show me the good ones. At the apple stand, something shifted. Elodie came alive in a way Collins hadn't yet witnessed. She picked up an apple, examined it carefully, then handed it to Abigail. See how it's firm when you press it gently? No soft spots. And look at the color. This variety should have a deep red with these yellow undertones. That means it got enough sun. She held it up to Abigail's nose. Smell the stem end. Smells fresh, right? Not fermented or weird. Abigail inhaled deeply and nodded, completely captivated. That's a good apple, Elodie declared, placing it in their bag. They repeated the process with a dozen apples. Elodie teaching, Abigail learning, Collins watching with a warmth spreading through his chest. His daughter was laughing, truly laughing, and Elodie, for these precious minutes, seemed to forget whatever darkness had driven her to tears on that bus stop bench. How do you know all this? Collins asked. My mom and I used to come to farmers markets every Saturday. She grew up on a farm in eastern Oregon before she moved to Portland for nursing school. She taught me everything about picking produce. Her eyes went distant for a moment. I haven't been to a market since she died. Couldn't afford it. Daddy, can we get donuts? Abigail pointed at a stand where fresh donuts were being made, the tempting aroma of fried dough and cinnamon sugar wafting through the air. Of course, baby. As they walked toward the donut stand, Elodie began to lag behind, and Collins noticed. You're getting a donut too, he said gently but firmly. Collins, I can't. When's the last time you had something warm and sweet? She didn't answer. That's what I thought. He ordered 3 donuts, handing one to Elodie along with a hot coffee. No arguments. Elodie accepted the donut with shaking hands, and when she bit into it, Collins saw her eyes close. The expression on her face was almost painful to witness. Gratitude mingled with grief, intertwined with the simple pleasure of warm food. They sat on a bench while Abigail watched a juggler perform. An idea, improbable as it seemed, had been forming in his mind for the past hour. It was probably crazy, definitely impulsive, but something about this woman and her story, something about the way his daughter had immediately connected with her, something about recognizing the same grief he carried within him every day. It all coalesced into a decision that felt both reckless and somehow right. "Elodie," he said carefully, "I want to ask you something, and I need you to really think about it before you answer." She looked at him wearily. "Okay. I have a garage apartment. It's a studio above our detached garage in the backyard. The last tenant moved out 6 months ago, and I haven't had time to list it again." He paused, choosing his words with deliberation. "It needs some cleaning, maybe some paint, but it has heat, running water, a small kitchenette. It's not much, but it's weatherproof and warm." Elodie's eyes widened. "Collins, I can't pay rent. I don't have." "I'm not asking for rent," Collins interrupted. "I'm asking for help." I don't understand." Collins glanced over at Abigail, who was giggling at the juggler. "I work construction, long hours, early starts. Abigail is in after-school care until 6 most days, and she hates it. The woman who runs it is nice enough, but it's just TV and snacks in a church basement. No homework help, no real attention." He turned back to Elodie. "I come home exhausted. Most nights I'm too tired to do anything but heat up chicken nuggets and pass out during bedtime stories. Abigail deserves better. She deserves someone who can pick her up from school, help with her homework, and maybe make sure she eats a vegetable once in a while." "You want me to be a nanny?" "I want to trade," Collins corrected. "Room and board in exchange for childcare and some light housework. You'd have your own space, your own life. But you'd be there for Abigail when I can't be. You said you ran a children's reading program. You know how to connect with kids. Abigail already trusts you, which is rare. She's been cautious since her mom died." Elodie was silent, her mind clearly reeling. "I know this is forward. I know you don't know us and we don't really know you, but I'm a good judge of character and so is my daughter. And right now I think we could help each other." "Why would you do this?" Elodie asked, her voice thick with emotion. "You don't even know me. I know you're educated. I know you're grieving someone you loved deeply. I know you're capable, the way you taught Abigail about apples, the patience you showed with her questions. I know my 6-year-old daughter, who has better instincts about people than most adults I've met, wanted to hug you." He met her eyes. "And I know what it's like to need someone to throw you a lifeline when you're drowning." Tears were streaming down Elodie's face again. But these were qualitatively different from the ones at the bus stop. These were tears of overwhelming emotion. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say you'll think about it," Collins said. "The offer stands. No pressure. I'm not trying to be a savior or play hero. I'm just a single dad who needs help, offering help to someone who needs it. Fair trade." Elodie wiped her eyes, laughing weakly. "Fair trade? That's what you're calling this? What would you call it?" She looked at him for a long moment. "I'd call it the kindest thing anyone has done for me in a very long time." Abigail ran back over, powdered sugar coating her nose. "The juggler was so cool. He caught 5 balls. Daddy, can you juggle?" "Not even close, baby." Abigail looked between her father and Elodie, her 6-year-old intuition picking up on the emotional weight in the air. "Is Elodie okay?" "Yeah, sweetheart. She's okay." Abigail studied Elodie's tear-streaked face, then wrapped her arms around her waist. "I'm glad we found you today." Elodie hugged her back, closing her eyes. Over Abigail's head, she looked at Collins. Could I have some time to think about your offer?" "Of course. Take all the time you need." "I don't have a phone," Elodie admitted quietly. Collins pulled out his phone and a receipt from his pocket, writing down his number. "The library on Belmont opens at 10 tomorrow. Abigail and I go to Sunday story time there at 10:30 every week. If you want to talk more, find us there." Elodie took the receipt, folding it carefully as if it were a precious artifact. "The Belmont Library, 10:30. No pressure," Collins emphasized. "If you decide it's not for you, no hard feelings. But if you want to give it a try, we'll make it work." As they prepared to part ways, Collins and Abigail heading home, Elodie to wherever she would sleep that night, Abigail tugged on Elodie's coat. "You'll come tomorrow, right? To the library?" Elodie knelt down to Abigail's level, really looking at this small girl who had somehow altered the entire trajectory of her day with one simple hug. "You know what? Yes, I'll be there. Promise? Abigail held out her pinky. Elodie linked her pinky with the child's, feeling the simple trust in that gesture like a weight and a gift simultaneously. I promise. That night, as Collins tucked Abigail into bed in their small two-bedroom house, she looked up at him with serious eyes. Daddy, why did you invite Elodie to live with us? Collins sat on the edge of her bed, considering his answer. His daughter was young, but she was intelligent. She deserved honesty. Remember last month when you had that bad dream about monsters, and you said hugging Mr. Bunny made you feel safer? Abigail nodded, clutching the worn, stuffed rabbit that had been hers since birth. Sometimes grown-ups need that, too. Not the stuffed animal part, but people to remind them they're not alone in the scary stuff. Elodie lost her mommy, and she doesn't have anybody to help her feel safe right now, like how Uncle Marcus and Aunt Jennifer helped us when Mommy died. Collins felt his throat tighten. Exactly like that, baby. If they hadn't brought us meals and helped watch you while I worked, I don't know how we would have survived those first months. Are we paying it forward? Abigail asked. It was a phrase Collins had taught her when they donated old toys to the children's hospital, passing on the kindness others had shown them. Yeah, sweetheart, we're paying it forward. Abigail was quiet for a moment, then said something that made Collins' heart clench. I think Mommy would like Elodie. Why is that? Because Mommy always said the best way to heal your own hurt is to help heal someone else's. Remember? She said that when we took flowers to Miss Sonia after her husband died. Collins did remember. His wife had said those exact words, just 3 months before she herself died unexpectedly on an operating table, felled by a blood clot that nobody had foreseen during what should have been routine surgery. He kissed Abigail's forehead, fighting back tears. You're absolutely right, baby. Mommy would like Elodie very much. After Abigail fell asleep, Collins sat in his living room, nursing a beer, wondering if he'd made the right decision. Inviting a stranger to live on his property to care for his daughter. It could be seen as reckless, even dangerous. But something in his gut told him this was different. Elodie wasn't a threat. She was someone drowning who needed a rope. And maybe, just maybe, helping her would help heal some of the broken pieces inside himself and Abigail. He pulled out his phone and texted his brother, Marcus. Did something potentially crazy today. I'll explain tomorrow, but I think it might be a good kind of crazy. Marcus replied immediately. This better not involve motorcycles or online poker. Collins smiled despite himself. Neither. I'll call you tomorrow after I know if it's actually happening. He went to bed that night, not knowing if Elodie would show up at the library, not knowing if his impulsive offer had been wise, not knowing what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time in 3 years he felt like maybe, just maybe, something good was on the horizon. Sunday morning, Collins was a bundle of nerves. He cleaned the garage apartment the night before after Abigail went to bed, swept out the dust, washed the windows, ensured the heat worked and the hot water ran. The space was small, perhaps 400 square feet, but it featured a kitchenette, a full bathroom, and enough room for a bed and some essential furniture. It smelled a little musty, but nothing that fresh air and time couldn't remedy. If she agreed. At 10:27 a.m., Collins and Abigail walked into the Belmont Library. Sunday story time didn't commence until 10:30, and Collins found himself fixating on the entrance, his heart rate elevated in a manner unrelated to caffeine. Do you think she'll come? Abigail whispered, clutching his hand. I don't know, baby, but if she doesn't, we'll still have story time, okay? Abigail nodded, but Collins discerned the nascent disappointment clouding her bright eyes. And then, precisely at 10:27, the library door swung open. Elodie walked in. She'd managed to shower somehow, perhaps at a truck stop or a community center. Her blonde hair, still damp, was combed neatly. When she spotted them, her expression was a mixture of nervousness and hopefulness. Abigail spotted her simultaneously and immediately broke free of Collins's grasp, running across the library floor, eliciting a stern glance from the librarian. You came. You kept your promise. Elodie caught the flying 6-year-old in a hug, her eyes closing as she embraced the child. Over Abigail's head, she met Collins's gaze. He smiled and mouthed, "Thank you." She mouthed back, "Thank you." The story time revolved around a lost cat finding its way home, and Elodie sat with them, Abigail nestled securely between her and Collins. After it ended, they walked outside into the crisp November morning. "I thought about your offer all night," Elodie said as they stood on the library steps. "I barely slept, just kept turning it over in my mind." "And?" Collins prompted gently. "I want to say yes, but I need you to know something first." She took a deep breath. "I have nothing to offer you except my time and my effort. I don't have references anymore. Powell's wouldn't give me one after I was let go." Elodie's heart sank. "Go. I don't have professional clothes for interviews. I've been surviving on the streets for months now. Changes you, wears you down." The words tumbled out, raw and honest. "I'm not the same person I was before my mom died." Colin's voice, soft with understanding, cut through her despair. "None of us are the same people we were before loss." He paused, a shadow passing over his features. "I'm not the same man I was before my wife died." He looked at Elodie, his gaze steady. "Change isn't always bad, though. Sometimes it's just different." She hesitated, fear warring with a desperate hope. "I don't want to let you down, or worse, let Abigail down." Colin considered her words, his brow furrowed in thought. Finally he spoke, an offer hanging in the air. "Here's what I propose. A 1-week trial. You stay in the apartment, help with Abigail, and we see if it works. For all of us. No strings attached. If after a week you want to leave, or if I feel it's not working out, we reassess. No hard feelings either way. Fair?" Elodie stared at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. Was this real? Was this kind of generosity even possible? "That's more than fair. That's incredibly generous." A flicker of a smile touched Colin's lips. "So is that a yes?" A genuine smile, the first he'd seen on her face, bloomed across Elodie's features. "Yes," she breathed. "It's a yes." A squeal of delight erupted from Abigail, who launched into an impromptu dance right there on the library steps. "Elodie's coming to live with us. Daddy, can we show her the apartment now? Please?" Colin turned to Elodie, a question in his eyes. "If Elodie wants to see it." "I'd love to," Elodie said, relief washing over her in a warm wave. One more night off the streets. One more night with a roof over her head and a locked door between her and the world. Maybe more than one night if things worked out. The garage apartment was far from luxurious. A simple space above the detached garage. But watching Elodie walk through it was like watching someone unearth a hidden treasure. She ran her hand reverently over the small kitchenette counter, tested the faucet, marveling at the clear, hot water that flowed freely. She sat tentatively on the worn futon that served as both couch and bed, its springs protesting slightly beneath her weight. Then, she gazed out the window at the small, overgrown backyard where Colin had already promised Abigail they'd plant a garden in the spring. "It's perfect," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "It needs work," Colin said honestly, wanting her to have realistic expectations. "The paint is old, that futon is probably due for replacement, and the heater is loud." "It's perfect," Elodie repeated, turning to face him, tears glistening in her eyes. "Colin, you have no idea. I've spent the last 4 months sleeping in doorways, under bridges, in 24-hour McDonald's until they kicked me out. Having a door that locks, a bed that's mine, a bathroom where I don't have to worry about being assaulted. This is perfect." Colin felt a lump forming in his own throat, his eyes stinging with unshed tears. He swallowed hard, trying to regain his composure. "I'll get you some sheets and towels. There's a mini fridge under the counter, and I'll stock it with basics. Abigail gets home from school at 3:30. So, if you could be there to pick her up." "I'll be there," Elodie said immediately, her voice firm with resolve. "Colin, I won't let you down. Promise." He looked into her earnest eyes, saw the pain and the hope reflected there, and felt a surprising surge of trust. "I believe you," and strangely enough he did. The first week was an adjustment for everyone, a delicate dance of personalities and expectations. Elodie, still raw from her experiences, was determined to prove herself. She picked up Abigail from Bridal Mile Elementary that Monday, a little nervous about meeting a gaggle of 6-year-olds. Abigail, however, came home chattering excitedly about how all her friends thought ALO was so cool, a sentiment that eased Elodie's anxieties considerably. They tackled homework together at the kitchen table, Elodie's patience a welcome contrast to Colin's sometimes harried attempts to balance work and single parenthood. By Wednesday, the aroma of simmering tomatoes and garlic filled the apartment as Elodie prepared spaghetti for dinner, a far cry from the usual mac and cheese that dominated their meals. Colin walked in, pleasantly surprised. "You didn't have to cook," he said, genuinely appreciative. "I wanted to," she replied, smiling. "Besides, I saw the situation in your pantry. How much mac and cheese can one 6-year-old eat?" "You'd be surprised," Colin said with a laugh, relieved to see Abigail happily devouring a plate of spaghetti loaded with vegetables. By Friday, Abigail's reading homework was not only done, but done early. Elodie, sensing Abigail's natural curiosity, had even helped her start a book report that wasn't due for 2 weeks. "She's ahead of schedule," Elodie told Colin that evening, a hint of pride in her voice. "And she's reading at almost a 2nd grade level." "She's smart," Colin said softly, his voice filled with love. "Gets that from her mom." The week-long trial period ended, and neither of them brought up the subject of Elodie leaving. It had simply worked. The apartment felt warmer, brighter, filled with a sense of belonging that had been missing for so long. 3 months in, something had subtly shifted in their little household, a gradual warming that chased away the lingering chill of grief and loneliness. The garage apartment, once a stark and impersonal space, now felt like a home. Curtains, sewn by Elodie from fabric she'd scavenged at an estate sale, softened the harsh light. The walls had been painted a warm cream color using paint Colin had brought home from a construction site, lending a cozy atmosphere. A small bookshelf, found at Goodwill and proudly displayed, was slowly filling with books from the library's free bin, a testament to Elodie's growing stability. Elodie, in turn, had started volunteering at the Belmont Library on Saturdays, a commitment that had blossomed into a part-time, paid position shelving books and helping with children's programs. It wasn't much, 12 hours a week, but it was income, legitimate income. She was rebuilding her life, brick by painstaking brick. Abigail, too, was thriving under Elodie's influence. Her reading had improved dramatically. She'd moved up 2 levels in her reading group at school, and her teacher had commented on how much more confident she seemed, a transformation that warmed Colin's heart. And Colin had started coming home to a house that felt lived in again, not just survived in. There was laughter, spontaneous and joyful, echoing through the rooms. There were home-cooked meals more often than not, the comforting aroma replacing the stale scent of takeout. There was someone who asked him about his day, really listened to the answer, and offered a sympathetic ear when work was particularly stressful. He tried not to think too hard about the way his heart rate picked up when Elodie smiled at him, or the way he'd started taking longer showers and actually combing his hair in the morning, or the way he found excuses to linger in the kitchen when she was cooking just to talk. This was a business arrangement, a trade. She helped with Abigail. He provided housing. That was all. Except it was starting to feel like more, and that terrified him. 6 months after that fateful Saturday morning at the bus stop, Colin came home to find the backyard completely transformed. Elodie and Abigail, their faces flushed with exertion, had planted a garden. Neat rows of starter plants, tomatoes, peppers, herbs, even a few colorful flowers, lined the raised beds that Colin had helped them build a few weeks earlier. Abigail was covered in dirt, her face smudged with soil, her hair a wild tangle, but she'd never looked happier. "Daddy, look!" she exclaimed, bouncing up and down with excitement. "We planted everything. Elodie taught me how deep to put the roots and how much to water and everything." Colin's gaze shifted to Elodie, who was equally dirty, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing an old t-shirt and jeans. She smiled at him, and a sudden, Unexpected thought pierced through him. She looked beautiful. The thought hit him like a physical blow, catching him completely off guard. She looked beautiful. It's amazing, he managed to say, his voice slightly hoarse. Your daughter is a natural gardener, Elodie said, her eyes sparkling with pride. She didn't give up, even when the soil was really hard to dig. I get my stubbornness from Daddy, Abigail announced proudly, puffing out her chest. They ordered pizza that night and ate it on the back porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in vibrant shades of orange and pink. Abigail chattered nonstop about her garden plans, already dreaming of the juicy tomatoes they'd eat in the summer. After Abigail went to bed, Colin and Elodie lingered outside a little longer, the spring air cool but pleasant. Thank you, Colin said quietly, his voice filled with gratitude. For the garden, for everything you do for her. Elodie shrugged, her gaze fixed on the twinkling stars above. She makes it easy. She's an incredible kid, Colin. She is, he agreed, his voice thick with emotion. But you've helped bring her back to life in ways I couldn't. She was so closed off after her mom died. Wouldn't talk about feelings, wouldn't cry, just kept everything locked inside. Now she laughs again. Really laughs. You did that too. Elodie turned to him, her eyes soft with understanding. You're a good father, Colin. She knows she's loved. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken feelings hanging heavy in the air between them. Ellie, I need to tell you something, Colin said, his voice barely above a whisper. She turned to look at him, her expression suddenly nervous. Okay. He took a deep breath, steeling himself to speak the words that had been trapped inside him for so long. My wife, her name was Jennifer. She died during what should have been a routine gallbladder surgery, a blood clot to her lung. The doctor said it was rare, unpredictable, nobody's fault. She went in for surgery at 9 a.m. and was gone by noon. I had 45 minutes to say goodbye, and she was already unconscious. I never got to tell her all the things I should have said. Elodie reached out and took his hand, her touch warm and comforting, just held it, offering silent support. I've been frozen since then, Colin continued, his voice raw with pain. Just going through the motions, work, Abigail, survive, repeat. I didn't let myself feel anything because feeling meant hurting, and I couldn't afford to hurt when Abigail needed me to be strong. And now, Elodie asked softly, her eyes searching his. Now, I'm starting to feel things again, he admitted, his voice barely audible. And it scares the hell out of me. Elodie squeezed his hand, understanding exactly what he was saying and what he wasn't saying. My mom used to tell me that grief isn't something you get over, she said quietly, her voice filled with empathy. It's something you learn to carry differently. The weight never really changes, but you get stronger. Strong enough to hold the grief and still have room for other things. Joy, hope, maybe even love again someday. Colin looked at her, at this woman who'd walked into his life when they both needed saving, and felt something crack open in his chest. Something that had been frozen for 3 long years. I think you're right, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. They sat there holding hands as the stars came out, not saying anything more, not needing to. Some things didn't need words. By 9 months, anyone looking at them would have assumed they were already a family, a unit bound by something deeper than circumstance. Elodie was working 20 hours a week at the library now, and she'd enrolled in online courses to finish her teaching certification, driven by a newfound sense of purpose. Colin, seeing her determination, had helped her buy a used laptop, calling it a business investment in Abigail's education. A thinly veiled excuse to support her dreams. Abigail, too, was flourishing. Her second-grade teacher had pulled Colin aside at parent-teacher conferences to say that his daughter was one of the top readers in the class and that her confidence had grown remarkably. Whatever you're doing at home, keep doing it, the teacher had advised, unaware of the profound impact Elodie had had on their lives. What they were doing at home was becoming a unit, a family. The 3 of them had fallen into rhythms and routines that felt natural and effortless. Sunday pancakes with Elodie patiently teaching Abigail to flip them without making a mess. Wednesday night movie nights with popcorn and elaborate blanket forts. Saturday morning farmers market trips where Abigail, now a seasoned pro, taught other kids how to pick the best apples. Colin and Elodie hadn't talked again about the feelings that were growing between them, carefully skirting around the issue, maintaining a facade of professionalism and caution, diligently preserving their carefully constructed boundaries. But the boundaries were getting harder and harder to maintain. The accidental hand touches that lingered a moment too long. The way Colin's gaze would linger on Elodie when she was focused on helping Abigail with her homework. His heart aching with a longing he couldn't name. The way Elodie's breath would catch when Colin came home from work. His shirt damp with sweat. His muscles defined from years of construction work. The way Abigail had started calling Elodie Ellie, with the easy affection of a child who'd claimed someone as family. The way they'd both started imagining, in stolen moments of quiet reflection, what it would be like if this arrangement became something more, something permanent, something real. It was October again, 1 year since that life-altering Saturday at the bus stop, when everything had irrevocably changed. Colin had taken the afternoon off work, a rare occurrence, to help Abigail's class with a harvest festival. Elodie had come too, officially as a volunteer, but really because Abigail had begged them both to be there, her eyes pleading with an intensity that neither of them could resist. After the festival, as they walked home, Abigail skipping between them, holding both their hands, she looked up at them with those perceptive brown eyes that seemed to see straight through to their souls. "Are you guys going to get married?" Colin nearly tripped over his own feet, his heart pounding in his chest. Elodie's face flushed a bright crimson, her eyes wide with surprise. "Abigail, that's not—" Colin started, unsure how to respond to such a direct and unexpected question. "Why not?" Abigail interrupted, her 7-year-old logic unassailable. "You like each other, I can tell. And we're already a family, so why not make it official?" "It's more complicated than that, sweetheart," Elodie said gently, trying to explain the complexities of adult relationships to a child. "Why? Because you think I won't be okay with it?" Abigail stopped walking and looked at both of them, her expression serious. "Seriously, I miss Mommy every day. I'll always miss her, but she's not coming back. And I think she'd want Daddy to be happy again. And I think she'd want me to have someone like you, Ellie." Colin felt tears prickling his eyes, his throat tight with emotion. He couldn't believe the depth of his daughter's understanding and the profoundness of her love. "I want you to get married," Abigail said firmly, her voice leaving no room for argument. "I've been wishing for it every night on the first star, so you should probably just do it before I run out of wishes." She then, with a theatrical flourish, skipped ahead of them, leaving Colin and Elodie standing there, speechless and stunned by the weight of her words. "Well," Elodie said after a long moment, breaking the silence with a nervous laugh. "That was subtle." Colin laughed, a real laugh that came from deep within his belly, a sound he hadn't heard in far too long. "She gets her lack of subtlety from me, too, apparently." They started walking again, slower now, the unspoken question hanging heavy between them. "Colin," Elodie said softly, her voice filled with tenderness, "what do you want?" He stopped walking and turned to face her fully, his eyes searching hers. Honestly, I want to stop pretending that this is just a business arrangement. I want to stop lying to myself about what I feel when you smile at me. I want to stop finding excuses to be in the same room as you. I want to kiss you. I've wanted to kiss you for months." Elodie's eyes were shining, reflecting the moonlight like tiny diamonds. "Then why haven't you?" He looked away, his voice filled with a vulnerability he rarely allowed himself to show. "Because I'm terrified. Because letting myself love someone again means risking the kind of loss that nearly destroyed me the first time. Because you deserve better than someone with all my baggage and a kid and a job that keeps me away 12 hours a day." Elodie stepped forward and kissed him, her touch gentle and reassuring. It was soft and tentative and perfect, a silent promise of hope and healing. When they broke apart, both of them were crying, tears of relief and fear and overwhelming joy streaming down their faces. "I'm terrified, too," Elodie whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. I lost my mom, and my entire life fell apart. The idea of loving someone and risking that kind of loss again. It's terrifying. But Colin, I think I'm more scared of never taking the risk at all. He reached out and cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs gently wiping away her tears. I'm not easy to love. I work too much. I'm not great at talking about feelings. I have a daughter who will always come first. I know all that. Elodie interrupted, her voice firm with conviction. I've lived with you for a year. I've seen you exhausted and frustrated and worried and sad. And I've also seen you be the most devoted father I've ever known. I've seen you work yourself to the bone to provide for Abigail. I've seen you be kind to me even when you didn't have to be. I've seen you, Colin. All of you. And I love what I see. He kissed her again, longer this time, pulling her close, holding her tight as if he was afraid she might disappear. The kiss was filled with a desperate longing, a silent vow to cherish and protect her, to build a future together, one filled with love and laughter and unwavering support. When they finally made it home, Abigail was waiting for them on the porch, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the porch light, a knowing smile playing on her lips. Did you kiss? She asked immediately, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. Abigail, Colin started, his face flushing with embarrassment. But Elodie laughed, her heart soaring with happiness. Yes, we kissed. Abigail threw her hands in the air, her grin widening. Finally, I was running out of wishes. The three of them went inside together, hand in hand, a father, a daughter, and the woman who'd come into their lives crying on a bus stop bench, forever changed by a 6-year-old's offered hug. 1 year became 2 years, a tapestry woven with shared experiences and growing love. The garage apartment became less and less used as Elodie spent more and more nights in the main house, until eventually Colin asked if she wanted to just move her things in officially, a question he asked with a mixture of hope and trepidation. Are you sure? She'd asked, her eyes searching his, needing reassurance. I've never been more sure of anything, he'd replied, his voice filled with unwavering conviction. Elodie got her teaching certification and started working as a substitute teacher, building towards a full-time position, her passion for education reignited. The library kept her on for Saturday programs because the kids loved her infectious enthusiasm and her ability to make learning fun. Abigail called her Ellie full-time now, and sometimes, in moments of pure joy, she'd slip and call her Mom. Ellie never corrected her, cherishing the unintentional endearment as a sign of their growing bond. Colin proposed on a Saturday morning at the farmer's market, the same market where he'd first invited Elodie to join them, the place where their paths had first intertwined. He got down on one knee right there by the apple stand, the sweet scent of ripe fruit filling the air, while Abigail bounced excitedly beside him, clapping her hands with glee. You taught us how to pick the good ones, he said, his voice choked with emotion, holding out a ring he'd saved 6 months to buy, a symbol of his commitment and his enduring love. And Elodie, you're the best one. Will you marry me? She said yes through tears, her voice barely audible above the cheers of the surrounding crowd. A yes that sealed their fate and solidified their family. They got married 6 months later in a small, intimate ceremony with just close family and friends, a celebration of their love and their journey. Abigail was the flower girl and took her duties very seriously, scattering rose petals with the grace and precision of a seasoned professional. Marcus, Colin's brother, was best man and gave a speech that was both humorous and heartfelt, recounting how Colin had told him years ago that he'd never love again, and how grateful he was that Colin had been proven wrong. Elodie's vows included a line that made everyone cry, a testament to the transformative power of kindness. 1.5 years ago, I was sitting on a bench with nothing left but grief, lost and alone in a world that felt cold and uncaring. And a little girl with a heart too big for the world asked if she could hug me. That hug saved my life. So did her father. You both remind me every day that the world, despite everything, is still full of kindness, still full of second chances, still full of love. As they danced at the reception, swaying to the music, Elodie's head resting on Colin's shoulder, Abigail squeezed between them, her arms wrapped tightly around both of their waists. Colin whispered, his voice filled with wonder. "I can't believe you're my wife," Elodie whispered back, her voice filled with tenderness. "Believe it, you're stuck with me now. Best decision I ever made. Second best, actually. First was listening to my daughter when she wanted to hug a stranger." Abigail looked up at both of them, her eyes shining with pride. "See," she said, her voice brimming with confidence. "I told you my hugs were magic, and you know what? She was right. If you've ever doubted whether one small act of kindness can change someone's life, this story is proof that it can. A reminder that even the smallest gesture of compassion can have a profound and lasting impact." Colin and Elodie didn't just build a life together. They built a home, a haven of love and laughter, a place where broken hearts could heal and new beginnings could blossom. A real home full of laughter and gardens and bedtime stories and Saturday morning pancakes. A testament to the power of love and the resilience of the human spirit. The kind of home where grief has a place at the table, acknowledged and honored, but where joy has a louder voice, where hope always gets the final word. Abigail is 9 now, a bright and confident young girl, and she still tells the story of how she met her mom at a bus stop. A story she recounts with a sense of wonder and pride. "I just knew she needed a hug," she says, her eyes twinkling with mischief. And hugs fix almost everything. If this story touched your heart, do me a favor. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who needs a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope remains, that kindness can conquer despair, and that love can bloom in the most unexpected places. And subscribe to hear more stories like this. Stories that celebrate the human spirit. Stories that remind us of our shared humanity. We all know someone who's struggling, someone who's lost, someone who just needs to be reminded that they're not alone, that they are seen and valued and loved. Be that reminder. Be that person who stops and notices, who offers a helping hand, who extends a simple act of kindness. Be the one who offers a kindness that costs you nothing but might mean everything to someone else. The one who shines a light in the darkness and offers a glimmer of hope. And if you're the person sitting on that bench right now, crying and wondering if anyone sees you, if you feel lost and alone and hopeless, I promise you someone does. Hold on. Your Abigail might be right around the corner, waiting to offer you a hug, waiting to lead you towards a brighter future. Your second chance is coming. Thanks for staying with me through this story. It means everything. See you in the next one.